Clock in 9:54 p.m. C. Mercer Tech Night. C. State 3. Wind northeast, PPE OK. I should have known something was wrong the instant I saw the numbers on the offer sheet. $80 an hour for a junior maintenance tech. Offshore, sure, but still laughable on paper, the kind of figure that makes you wonder who forgot a decimal, or who wants you badly enough to pretend that math is optional. They called it a temporary night rotation. 8 weeks. I called it salvation. My rent was late, my student loans feral, and Hendrix Petroleum didn't seem to care about resumes, so long as you could read a list and not argue with it. A helicopter set me down on Rig H9 a breath before dusk. From above, the platform looked less like a workplace and more like a skeleton afloat. Steel bones pinned to black water, red beacons thumping in the haze like a mechanical heart that refused to die. When my boots hit deck, the air tasted of brine and diesel with a thin metallic aftersmell, like old blood left to dry in a warehouse. Inside, quieter than I expected. Not peace, containment. The low hum of circulation pumps, an occasional hull-deep groan as the rig adjusted to the tide. A man waited by the main hatch, motionless, a clipboard anchored to his palm. Supervisor Harlan, 60s, skin wind-burned, eyes a salt-scoured gray. Gray as everything else. No handshake. A nod, a turn toward the corridor. Mercer, right? Night systems, 8 to 6. Follow the night shift rules exactly. No improvising. He passed me a laminated sheet, edges webbed with old tape. 10 lines in all caps, like a warning shouted across a windy parking lot. Night shift protocols, Rig H9. Number 1. Pump equals life. Keep at least one pump running. If all stop, restart immediately. Shelter and cold store until Siren 3 blasts. Number 2. Cabin 7. Keep empty. Number 3. Red line intercom. Answer immediately. Obey exactly. Number 4. 222. Audit. Observe only. Do not touch. Number 5. PA tones. Blue tone equals stay inside control. C tone equals seal floodgates. Tone A equals fatality expected. Number 6. Steel mirror. After midnight, no direct eye contact. Number 7. 1 to 4. Pipe noise. Unplug source. Tag OS. Number 8. Crew limit 13. If a 14th appears, offer thermos from helideck emergency kit. Number 9. Subsea delivery. No eye contact. Place at hatch. Knock 3 times. Number 10. Morning handoff. All brine jars half filled. Deviation equals termination. I stared, waiting for the joke. No smile arrived. Are these, safety protocols? Harlan's washed-out eyes didn't register confusion, just compliance. You follow them, you'll get paid. That's all that matters. He shepherded me through narrow passageways. Salt-slicked decking, walls breathing with buried machinery. In the mess hall, 2 figures over coffee. A woman in her 40s, knuckles calloused and calm on a chipped mug, and a younger guy polishing a gauge panel like it was a church relic. This is Riley, systems veteran, Harlan said, tipping his chin toward the woman. She'll show you the ropes. Jonah handles comms. Riley looked up, neutral face, alert eyes. Her gaze paused on the laminated sheet in my fist. You got the rules. Good. Most of us read them twice on night 1. Looks like a cult initiation, I offered. She didn't humor me. Not all of us were the first to read it. The wind shifted pitch outside, a long metallic braid rattling the structure. Deck lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied like nothing had dared happen. Harlan checked his watch. Shift starts in 6. You relieve main day at 10 p.m. Keep your PPE on and your intercom open. He vanished down the corridor, his boot falls clicking into the hum. Riley slid me a tray of fried fish. Eat. Food's worse after midnight. I chewed while reading the rules a third time. They were maintenance notes, sure, but also, not. Keep a pump running. Don't open cabin 7. No mirrors after midnight. It felt like instructions for something pretending to be a rig and doing a decent impression until the lights went out. At 10 p.m. the day crew filed past us without eye contact. Doors sealed with a hydraulic hiss like a lung exhaling behind steel ribs. Riley handed me a headset. Welcome to the graveyard. Night deepened the hum. Pumps thudded beneath the floor in patient measure, a heartbeat I felt through my soles. On the catwalk, the ocean stretched forever, black glass stippled with the rig's red constellations. I started my first checklist at the main panel. Pressure nominal, flow stable, alarms asleep. For the first time in months I thought, maybe I'd aimed myself correctly. Then somewhere below, a pump kicked on. Loud, abrupt, automatic. I hadn't touched a thing. Riley's head lifted. "You hear that?" "Yeah, did you trigger a restart?" "No, schedule's clear." The vibrations swelled, shaking the handrail. On the panel, a single line of text bloomed and vanished before the cursor could blink. Pump equals life. Riley's knuckles went bone white on the console. "Rule 1, she said soft. Outside, red warning lights beat against the sea, steady, slow, as if the rig's heart had skipped, panicked, and then remembered the rhythm that kept it alive. The vibration settled back into a steady thrum. The panel returned to blank indifference. The sea kept breathing red. "Don't wait for it to make sense," Riley said, tapping the top rail. "Just keep the checklist moving." She walked me through the night controls. Pump status, ballast, scrubbers, generators on standby. She moved like someone built inside this metal. Knuckles nicked, a black smear at her wrist like a tattoo. "Most nights, you babysit a heart that shouldn't be alive," she said. "It beats, you listen." We looped a perimeter sweep. Condensation beaded on pipes and ran in organized veins toward the drains. Cabin 7 waited halfway down the crew corridor, door the color of old teeth. Plastic tag at the latch. "Cabin 7, do not occupy." No lock, but the handle wore red tamper tape, and the porthole was painted over from the inside. The deck plate at the threshold was darker than its neighbors, the way something stays damp after everything else dries. "People call it superstition," Riley said. "Plumbing," I echoed, dubious. She shrugged. "Everything on this rig is a pipe to somewhere." Back in control, a laminated strip lived under the gauges, our 10 commandments in block type. Familiar now, less absurd, more like weather. At 12:41 a.m., the PA crackled and bled a 3-note blue tone, low, mid, low, like a ship's horn wrapped in a towel. Riley sealed the inner hatch and pulled her headset off. We stood still, letting the tone drag its cold fingers through our lungs. When it died, she exhaled. "Rule 5, blue means we stay inside unless something's actually on fire." "What triggers it?" "The rig, or something that borrows its voice." At 2 a.m., the world had narrowed to light, numbers and brine on my tongue. Time for the 222 audit, ocular only, shoulder to shoulder, hands down. A green indicator on scrubber B flickered like a blinking eye. Every instinct said push the button, clear the fault, be useful. Riley's elbow found my ribs. Observe only. If anything's still wrong after the sweep, we report. We don't play hero at night. I logged it. Scrubber B indicator flicker, no manual intervention. Somewhere down corridor, a patient's scrape answered a patient tap, metal finding metal in pendulum time. I looked up at the main panel and realized I was blinking too slowly. My reflection blinked slower, half a beat late. My chest rose while it hadn't started. LCD refresh, I told myself. Skin tightened anyway. At 2:07, the red handset intercom rang. Not a bell, a shiver through steel. "Rule 3, Riley said. You answer." I lifted cold plastic slick with condensation. "Control, night systems." A voice arrived, warped, genderless, patient. Like it had crossed a long distance through water and wire. "Section 6 walkway, wipe twice, clockwise only." "Come again?" I said before sense could catch up. Click. Riley already had a towel in her hand. "West deck is section 6, clockwise. Don't negotiate." Blue tone hadn't sounded again, so we went, inner corridor, stubborn door, night air slapping cold. "Section 6. Graded walkway along the shell, salt crust screeching under my boots, halos on the lights like wet coins. Twice," Riley said. "Clockwise." I wrapped the towel around a squeegee and began at the hinge, tracing a slow almost circle, up the dogleg, down the return, back to the door. 1. Again. 2. The towel grew heavy as if it drank. The smell wasn't just salt, it was iron dragged through cold water. A click under the grating near my heel, then ahead, then behind, like it miscounted our steps and kept trying again. I did not look down. Back in control, I laid the towel in the sink. A thin ribbon of black unwound, then vanished as if the drain led somewhere that wanted it more. No stain remained. Riley scrubbed CCTV. Section 6, 208 to 210. Empty walkway. My hands braced on the rail without a body attached. A wet sheen slid clockwise across the grating with nothing to move it. Timestamp steady, like law. The cameras only lie when they want you to leave, she said. This is them telling the truth. The red handset sat quiet, a bead of condensation shivering on the curled cord. I wrote, Continuity Log 200 to 211. Section 6 Walkway anomaly persists. The hum of the pumps settled into the floor the way a big sleeping animal adjusts its weight on your chest. My reflection watched me one beat late, learning me like a song. Outside, the patient red blink continued. Unblinking, somehow. By night 3, the abnormal felt organized again. The hum, the red pulse, the sour sweet oil smell, everything settled into a rhythm I could almost trust. The rules became the air. I knew them by bone without trying. Pump equals life. Cabin 7 stays empty. Red line, obey. 222, eyes only. PA tones, listen or else. Riley caught me mouthing them while I checked pressures. Good, she said. The more you think about them, the less they have to speak. At 11:46 p.m., the PA rattled. 3 short beeps, then a C tone, low and tremulous, like metal bending underwater. Every indicator blinked amber, then white. Seal the hatches, now, Riley said. We moved compartment by compartment, practiced hands 3 minutes that counted by teeth. Silence returned. Harlan's voice slid in, flat as a ruler. Test signal. Routine C-tone verification. Maintain operations. Riley's hands shook, unsealing the last hatch. He always says that, like the rig needs to hear itself breathe. 12:43 a.m., a winch clattered through the hall. Subsea access. Colder air, wetter light. Condensation fell at a metronomic drip as if someone had set a tempo. A red strobe coughed once above the hatch. On the platform, a sealed steel crate, salt-crusted and shrink-wrapped in black, stencil letters bleeding. Delivery 3A, do not open. For transfer only. No signature? No manifest? Riley kept her eyes off the crate. We don't look, we follow. I lifted. The metal bled brine though the floor around it was dry. Cold soaked through my gloves to burn. The scent climbed, iron braided with diesel. Place it at the hatch. Knock 3 times. Don't look down, Riley said, voice lower now as if to avoid waking something. The hatch was a circular door with 6 latches, a slow pulse working through it. Heartbeat stalled under steel. I set the crate, knocked. Thunk. 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 3 knocks answered from below, delayed and dull, resonating in my bones rather than the air. That's enough, Riley whispered. Go. But moisture traced the hatch rim, seawater pooling upward, thin as a thread, defying gravity like a magic trick that didn't care if I watched. When I stood, the vibrations stopped. The temperature dropped hard enough that my breath scraped white. Behind us, a hinge breathed. We turned. Through the corridor window, Cabin 7's door stood open an inch. Salt water ran from the threshold in a steady, tidy line, pooling along the grate, a vein drawn on steel. That door's been sealed since I got here, Riley said, barely audible. The low red light flickered back to steady. As quietly as it had opened, Cabin 7's door closed. The sound echoed like a slow exhale through someone else's lungs. Back in control, I logged with a hand I pretended wasn't shaking. Continuity log 12:43 a.m., subsea delivery received. Protocol 9 followed. The towel from last night hung drying. A fat drop fell and rang on the deck with a perfect bell pure plink. The puddle flexed once in time with the pumps and went still. Outside, the wind had died. The sea returned to black glass, patient as a face without pupils. And somewhere below, 3 slow, courteous knocks. Continuity log 12:03 a.m., triple blast detected. 222 audit, ocular only. The knocking followed me off duty, polite as a knuckle on a bulkhead. By the next shift, it had nested in the rig's bass rhythm. 3 knocks, pause, hum, repeat. Don't give it oxygen, Riley said. Noise below deck is constant. React to everything, and the rig will teach you more. Her mouth shaped a smile that never got promoted to her eyes. By 11 p.m. she'd curled in the mess, sleeping with her head on folded arms, gear still on. I sat alone in control, watching gauges breathe. Too steady, like a stage set with no props out of place. I don't know why I did it. Pride, probably. Curiosity pretending to be competence. The soft itch to feel in control of something. I cut the auxiliary pump line. At first, nothing. The vibration flattened. Ballast dipped a unit. The sea outside rose a fraction, like an animal taking a first breath. Then a different sound arrived. Low, heavy, wet with distance. Pipes strained. The deck tilted half an inch toward a pressure I couldn't name. Something moved. Weight in liquid, big enough to be plural. Lights dimmed to orange. Vents coughed. Then nothing. The hum that had been our absolute quiet was gone. Red text strobed. All pumps inactive. Pressure falling. The floor pulsed once. Soft as a heart under a palm, and stilled. The pipes began to knock. From below, deep and slow, climbing bone by bone through the platform's skeleton. Bang, bang, bang. The sounds split and bred, ricocheting in walls, answering itself out of sync. Riley burst in, half asleep and fully armored. What did you do? I just cut the auxiliary for a second. You killed the rhythm, Cal. Doesn't like that. Warning lights went red. Sirens hiccuped and died mid-wail. Every surface vibrated with a slow scrape, like something enormous sliding through narrow veins. The red intercom clicked. A hiss, almost language, dried my mouth. Keep it running. The handset rattled as if someone tried to lift it from the other side of the line. Rule 1. Riley slammed the pump switch. For a second, nothing. Then a cough, a roar. The graph climbed, pressure recovering. The knocking ceased as if a door had been politely closed. Only then did the temperature announce itself. The room had plunged 10 degrees. Our breath came in white ghosts. Condensation tore down the window like tears. A shrill tone split the air, 3 long blasts. Cold store. Now, Riley said. We ran. Emergency red lit the freezer like a wound. Frost veined the walls. Outside the door, something hit the steel at chest height. One last heavy palm, and then retreated. 3 blasts means it's done, she whispered. It's gone back under. I didn't ask what had gone under. I didn't want to know what counted as done. When we opened the door, the corridor was damp and very still. A handprint, wet, human-sized, oil-dark, stained the outside of the cold store door, black running in tendrils down the seam. It was still dripping. Continuity log 12:03 a.m. Triple blast confirmed. 222 audit, ocular only. The rig's rhythm returned, steadier than before. The hum in the floor matched my pulse until I couldn't tell which was which. Somewhere in the deep, the pumps were running. Though I wasn't sure whether we'd restarted them, or they'd decided to restart themselves. The handprint baked itself into steel like a shadow scorched by a welding arc. By morning, it had vanished. The smell it left, the coppery tang of blood braided with salt, stayed stubbornly in the vents. Harlan arrived at shift change, clipboard held like a badge. He didn't ask about sirens or frost. He scanned me once, then said, almost bored, "Did anyone enter the cold store last night?" Procedure voice, a question that knew its own answer. Riley stepped forward before I could inhale. "No, sir. Door remains sealed. Triple blast confirmed." Harlan nodded, unblinking. "Keep the pumps consistent. Don't interrupt the rhythm again." He turned away, boots ticking the deck, leaving behind faint wet prints that had no right to be there, and evaporated too fast. Night returned with glassy weather. The sea went mirror still, no wind, no texture, just the rig's red skeleton trembling against black water. At 3:17 a.m. the red handset pulsed, 3 staccato shivers. Riley picked up. "Turn off all deck lights. Duration 3 minutes, 17 seconds. "Commence," said the voice, half human, half recorded, the edges frayed by distance. We killed illumination. Instruments glowed, the pumps became thunder. Footsteps orbited control, paused near cabin 7. 3 knuckles tapped the glass behind me, measured. I didn't turn. At 3:20:17, a muffled C-tone rolled. We sealed, the lights came back on the dot. Catwalk empty, rails steaming where the steps had rested. At 4 a.m., mirror duty. Steel panels behind the pump gauges. Rule 6, after midnight, no direct eye contact. Work by touch, eyes closed. Metal cold under the rag, smooth as river stone, until heat tremored through it like a trapped heartbeat. My other hand kept wiping without permission. "Eyes shut," Riley hissed. "Don't stop till it's dry, then back away." I obeyed. Heat faded. I opened my eyes. The reflection didn't. My double kept wiping while my hands hung stupid at my sides. He tilted his head, slow, curious, then smiled. A fraction behind me. I hit the opposite bulkhead hard enough to see sparks. Riley didn't turn. She was reading flows. Blink. The mirror behaved. Just a man in coveralls, pale, shaking. Emergency light painting his face. "Write it down," Riley said, calm as rain. "What do I even call that?" "Steel panel distortion. Temporal lag. That's what the last guy used." She left first. I lingered one heartbeat too long. In the faint frost halo around my reflection, something taller than either of us formed behind the glass, breathing mist from the other side. Continuity log. 12:05 a.m. Mirror inspection. Steel panel distortion. Ocular lag reported. That day's sleep I dreamed my reflection kept working while I lay rigid, wiping and wiping, eyes open, never blinking. When I woke, the rag I'd left in the bay was wet again, fresh drips ticking to the grate in time with the pumps. Sleep came in broken pieces. When it did, Rule 6 pressed against my lids like a warning label you read too late. The delayed version of me was patient and industrious, a better employee than I'd ever be. The crew board outside the mess glowed the wrong color, sickly green instead of red. Jonah had gone off rotation after the storm. Harlan was covering night comms. Magnetic tags shivered, then settled. 14 names. 13 was our ceiling. Always 13. Riley leaned close. "Who's Eli Navarro?" That name wasn't here yesterday. Fresh ink in Harlan's tidy hand, new systems tech. PA crackle, new personnel arrived, proceed with onboarding. Then he walked in, Eli, 20s, clean coveralls, eyes that didn't dart. "Got the call this morning," he said. Voice over radio, sounded like main comms hub. Riley's mouth flattened. "It doesn't use radio anymore." Harlan materialized behind him like a door opening to a hallway you didn't know you were in. "Navarro will shadow night systems. Standard protocol." "Sir, the board already reads 13, I said. "There are 13 now," he replied, and disappeared into humming metal. By 12:50 a.m., Eli ran scrubber readings like he'd been born on shift. "Rule 8, I murmured. "Crew less than or equal to 13. "If there's a 14th, we fix it," Riley said. The word fix cracked like thin ice. At 12:58, I checked the brine shelf. Jar number 5 had crept above half. I corrected, late by a breath. The mirror panel across the bay smiled a beat off, then matched. Continuity log 12:58 a.m. Brine jar number 5 greater than half, corrected. Audit, ocular only. At 1:12, blue tone rolled long as a held breath. "Blue means everyone inside," I recited. "No," Riley said. "It means it's already begun." We sealed hatches. The tone stretched 40 seconds and bled away. Crewboard flickered. 14 active IDs, bright white, mine, Riley's, Eli's, and one more at the bottom, blinking like a pulse. R. Riley, deceased. Riley stared as if a photograph had spoken. "That's my brother's tag." The standard intercom chirped. Eli snatched it up. "Helideck storage. Open emergency locker. Retrieve thermos. Deliver to the newcomer." Click. "That's Rule 8's clause," Riley whispered, color gone. "Now you see why it exists." Helideck, wind combing fog like fingers through hair. The locker stamped thermos. Crew limit held a single metal flask half frozen, its breath forming lace. We found Eli at the rail, regarding a horizon with no reflection. "Eli," Riley called. "It's okay," he said. 14's too many. She approached, thermos extended. He took it. Frost spidered instantly across the metal. He looked at me, eyes empty of panic, mouth forming shapes that might have been words in a shallower world, and stepped backward over the rail into the fog. No splash, no cry, just cold air exhaling up from below. Deck lights pulsed once as if the rig inhaled through a new mouth. Back in control, board steady at 13. Eli's name gone, so was our Riley, deceased. In their place, a blank underline, flickering, waiting for a name to be typed by the C. I logged, fingers clumsy, continuity log 3 a.m. Crew reconciliation 14 to 13. Outside, rain or something thicker stitched the glass in dark threads. Each drop traced the faint outline of a boot print, repeating and repeating, as if an invisible body paced the deck, undecided about leaving. The storm unwound before dawn, leaving the air buzzed with static. Railings, bolts, pipe brackets, all of it thrummed like the rig had eaten lightning and couldn't swallow. The board held firm at 13. No one said Eli's name again. Still, during power balances when lights fell to their knees, I counted a 14th footfall a beat behind us, a ghost keeping time. At 1:40 a.m., the deck calmed to a held breath. Riley recalibrated brine cooling tanks. I wrote temperature drift numbers that looked like a calm heart. 3 sharp raps came from inside the nearest brine reservoir, hollow, deliberate. We froze. Then another knock, deeper, followed by a slow slosh like lungs turning under oil. It's the left tank. Section 3A, Riley said. Rule 7. Tag it out. The gauge needle trembled, then dipped as if thinking better of existing. I powered down the pump and flipped the out-of-service tag. The rig exhaled? A faint gust that rose from the floor grates like something breathing underneath. Through the vents, dripping, too slow to be condensation. A metallic creak toward the moon pool viewport. Water below shimmered, rippling inward as if pulled from below. A helmet light appeared, rising until it pressed against the glass. An ancient diver's suit, joints corroded, ribbons of black growth like oil come alive. No dive scheduled. Back away, Riley whispered. The helmet faceplate leveled with the glass. For a moment, only my reflection. Then hands pressed from the inside, palms outward, fingers flexing like testing muscle memory. No face, no bubbles, just darkness behind glass, pulsing, slow, rhythmic. Sensors flickered red, feed interrupt, light source detected, no personnel logged. The diver tilted its head jerky, then floated back into black. Light snapped off, ripples faded, but I could still hear breathing, not through comms, through metal. Control to Harlan, visual anomaly under moon pool. Confirm dive roster, Riley said. Static. Then no one's diving tonight. Click. We stood until the hum died, water settled, stillness returned. Slash, but as we left, I glanced once more through glass. Something still moved down there, just out of light's reach, circling, patient. Continuity log 1:44 a.m. Sensor feed, light anomaly under moon pool, no diver logged. Later, in the maintenance hall, the out-of-service tag we'd hung on the tank valve was gone. In its place, dripping and wet, a diver's glove, fingers curled, palm up, as if waiting for someone to take it. The glove was still there next shift, hung neatly over the valve, palm up, the way a hand waits to be held. No one claimed it. The pumps hummed too steady, like rehearsing. The moon pool glowed faint green. The water looked calm, but reflections trembled, as if the sea was trying to remember stillness. At 2 a.m., the PA woke with static, then a single synthetic chime that hurt my teeth. A familiar, half-human, half-recorded voice. Tone A, rising, scheduled, confirm presence. Riley froze. That's not maintenance. She glanced from comm board to calendar. Today's Wednesday. She's supposed to land Thursday. The red handset buzzed. I answered. The line hissed, then spoke in a warped version of my own voice. She's calling him now. She'll arrive tomorrow. I dropped the receiver. The echo stayed in my ear. Cal, Riley said, pale. Sarah's flying in tomorrow. Harlan approved. She wanted to surprise me. If the rig knows, she whispered, it's asking for her. On the PA monitor, red text pulsed. Rising tone confirmed. Clearance granted. Riley slammed override. The board flickered, then printed. Override denied. Clearance pre-existing. The next sound wasn't a tone. It was a song. A fragment of melody squeezed through metal, digitized and drowned. A woman's voice, stretched thin and broken, echoing through the rig. No words, just someone calling from water too deep for light. The hum under our feet shifted, slower, lower. As if the rig was answering. The moon pool began to vibrate, concentric ripples expanding. Lights flickered red. Faint, almost sweet through the handset. She's almost here. Harlan appeared in the doorway, clipboard, unreadable face. Confirmation from mainland. Passenger Sarah Riley cleared for arrival at 0900 hours. Protocol acknowledged. Cancel it, Riley cried. You can't let her come. The rig doesn't deny visitors, he said. It absorbs them. Every cycle wants something familiar. It's easier when it's blood. He left. At 2:11 the C-tone echoed, deep, throbbing, rolling like pressure in the ears. Rule says seal floodgates. I reached for controls but the system sealed them on its own. The pumps roared. The floor vibrated. The rig's reflections split into two shadows, one sharp, one flickering a half-beat behind. It's calling someone, Riley whispered. The PA replied, soft electronic, rising tone confirmed. For a moment there were two Rileys in the red light, one beside me, one watching from the glass, blinking a second late. The rig hummed in harmony with the song, too human to be mechanical. Continuity log 2 a.m. Tone, a rising test, pending. By the time the tone faded the sea was still again. The air smelled wrong, warm and wet, like someone had stepped in from the rain. On the console, a new alert, timestamp 08:59:59. The log pinged before sunrise. Flight arrival confirmed, S. Riley. The timestamp flickered, 08:59:59 and froze, like time refused to advance. No chopper came, no waves broke, the horizon was still. Riley didn't speak for hours. When she did, she's here, she's under. We went below, into the moon pool bay. The metal floor trembled faintly, heartbeat from the deep. The hatch was open. Harlan stood beside it, clipboard clutched like a prayer book. I didn't open it, he said. It does that before every renewal. The smell hit, brine and iron heavy with oil like something left too long in water. Beneath the grate, the sea glowed a faint viscous red, moving in slow waves. If it took her, I'm getting her back, Riley said and climbed down. The glow swallowed her. I followed. Air thickened. Ladder slick. Halfway, the red light pulsed with my heartbeat. The rig above moaned, metal coming awake. At the last rung, the subsea chamber, half flooded, ceiling dripping. At the center, the diver, half submerged, oil rippling around its suit. Helmet light burned steady. Riley stood before it, frozen. Riley, don't look. Too late. The diver moved impossibly fast, soundless. Gloved hands grabbed her shoulders and pulled her forward. She didn't scream. She gasped once, like recognizing something she'd forgotten. The surface boiled. I dove after her. Under the moon pool's oil and brine, the world opened. Pipes and cables stretched like veins. The diver's light illuminated rows of shapes in the current. Figures tangled in netting, skin gleaming like lacquered and crude. Faces I recognized. Crew from the logbook. Others. Older. Riley hung in the center, eyes open, mouth moving slow, bubbles slipping between her lips. A woman's voice, soft, distorted, rose through the liquid. She's home now. And then I saw her, Sarah. In a tangle of cables beneath Riley, hair floating like seaweed, chest rising faintly, alive. Eyes opened but not seeing, reflecting the red light above, glassy, fixed. Behind her pupils, something moved. A faint pulse, echo of the rig's heartbeat. The diver turned its helmet toward me. Released Riley, who floated upward, limp, then pointed up. One stays, it whispered, not sound, but vibration through water. The rest return. I grabbed Sarah and kicked toward the hatch, lungs burning. I looked back once. The diver sank, light dimming, arms spreading wide like a crucifix. Around it, suspended bodies began to breathe. I broke the surface, gasping, dragging Sarah through the hatch. Above, no sirens, no tones. just the throb of the pumps. The red light below dimmed and was gone. Riley didn't come up. Sarah's skin was warm, pulse foxlight under my fingers. When her eyes opened, they looked through me, out toward the sea. In their reflection, the moon pool still glowed faint red below deck. And in the water, something was knocking, slow, patient, waiting to be answered. The red light beneath the moon pool dimmed, then steadied, like a heartbeat refusing to die. Sarah lay beside me, breath shallow, skin filmed with salt. She blinked once, slowly, and whispered a single word that didn't sound like her own. Stay. The rig answered her. The intercom buzzed alive, every speaker whispering the same phrase. Renewal required. One must stay. Pumps surged to full pressure. Valves turned themselves. Metal groaned deep below like lungs filling. Harlan's logbook lay near Sarah. Last line in his writing, Cycle 27, transfer incomplete. Diver instability, replacement pending. Cycle 26, H. Harlan, partial transfer recorded. Ink bled from humidity. Underneath, scrawled in fresh oil black, CM. I stood, shaking. No. The red intercom snapped on again. Rule 1, it whispered in a child's voice. Pump equals life. Every word echoed through pipes. The rig began to breathe again. I ran. Lower deck, rusted signs, wet footprints, humming walls. Riley's warning. If you break the rules, it notices. So I decided to do exactly that. Step 1. I hit the main valve and killed the pumps. Heartbeat faltered, hum thinned to silence. Step 2. I forced the lock on cabin 7. The door peeled open like skin. Inside, a single cot soaked in oil, walls covered in handprints, black, layered, hundreds deep. A jar of brine sat pulsing, half empty. Step 3. I ripped the audit relay and crushed the ocular lens beneath my boot. For the first time since arriving, the camera stopped blinking. Step 4. I slammed every PA switch upward, flooding the decks with overlapping tones, blue tone, C tone, tone A, all screaming in chorus. The rig shook. Metal howled like an animal tearing itself apart. Step 5. I turned to the mirror panel. The reflection blinked, late, hesitant, then smiled. Behind it, Riley, not drowning, just waiting. I pressed my hand to steel. The reflection mirrored me exactly. Past midnight, eyes open, I held its stare. Then, for the first time, it wasn't late, it matched me perfectly. The PA shrieked, out of service removed, renewal breaking. The moon pool erupted, a geyser of oil. The diver rose, writhing, helmet splitting into clouds of black vapor. The tones twisted into one sound, an inhuman scream pitched through metal. Sarah gasped awake, eyes clear now. Human? Cal, it's letting go. The diver convulsed, light bursting through seams. For a heartbeat, faces inside the vapor. Eli, Harlan, Riley, turning toward me, mouthing the same word, stay. Not this time, I said. I reached for the breaker, pulled it. All lights died. Silence. Then, dawn. When the sun rose, the sea was glass. Sarah breathed slow but alive. Harlan's clipboard rested against the console, pages dry now. A final line written in my own hand, though I didn't remember writing it. Handoff. All brine jars equal half. Cycle complete. Riley's name had been crossed out. Underneath, mine was written. Next to it, a single note. CM, night shift lead. From the deck, I looked down into the still water. For a moment, only my reflection, one face, steady. Then the red light flickered beneath the surface, faint and rhythmic like something sleeping with one eye open. The rig exhaled. Hit like/subscribe and ring the bell to join Dr. Noctis. The fear has only just begun.